At first, the heat was radiating through my chest. It felt completely at ease with expanding my rib cage and making me lay down flat on my back. I could focus on my breathing and imagine that it was a corona that I could break into crumbs of light that my mind could sweep away so I could feel lighter and normal again. Usually it came to visit when I was depressed or just feeling like there was too much to figure out. At one point, when I was married, working, and the first book was out, it had disappeared. I was tired sometimes, but my mind and my chest felt clear, like blue water revealing the white sand beneath its surface. It wasn't until my husband left and claimed that he never loved me that it came back. But this was not the familiar heat that I could will away. This heat acted like the bigger, badder cousin who had heard that I was fucking with his little cousin. So it decided that I needed to be put in check. The heat would not let me sleep. My heart was pounding as if I had been running for hours. I couldn't lie on my left side because it felt as if the heart was a fist trying to pound the mattress. This presence in my chest made me sweat and toss all over the bed, even though I still kept sleeping on my side of the bed, and this agony went on for about 3 or 4 days until I tried to do what I could to just keep breathing. Passion flower extract, walks. I talked to the therapist who said, "That's anxiety." I had heard that before. I knew what it was. I read this book called Runaway Husbands and How to Survive the Loss of a Love. Been talking to a small handful of friends on the phone. How to Survive kept me from crying and sometimes made me cry when I needed it. Runaway Husbands was another story. It confirmed I was not crazy. The divorce was not necessarily my fault. And out of the many interviews that the author conducted with abandoned wives, the pattern was remarkably the same. The spouse who leaves announces leaving abruptly, without warning, acts like a complete stranger to the person that they had already spent years of their life with, and usually there is a coterie of women under his leadership that back up his decision. Among those qualities and others, it sounded a lot like my situation, and I had wished I had chosen a partner more wisely or just stayed alone. I stopped drinking coffee and took more walks. Something about being able to walk to work made the chest pain subside, made crying easier, made certain plants and colors a welcome sight. I noticed the peach roses growing on a neighbor's trellis, thin trailing purple leaves of potted purple hearts dotting Raritan Avenue, and graffiti pieces all along the bridge crossing the Raritan River. The colors all seemed more vivid now that I would work up a sweat and breathe a bit harder. I started drinking red wine with dinner and regularly watching stand-up comedians on Netflix. It all started with Breakfast at Tiffany's. Then it quickly shifted to Richard Pryor, Cat Williams, some more, and Margaret Cho. It loosened any remnants of the warm phantom that could waver through my chest, and I was starting to sleep normally again. The ritual of shower, eat, take vitamins, drink water, walk outside for at least a short time was helping me regain myself. I got an iPod and started loading it with songs to clear the fog that so desperately wanted to occupy my head. And somehow, Lupe Fiasco's Lasers album and T.I.'s No Matter What was helping. Slowly, I found myself clearing things out of the apartment that I did not need and could no longer afford. I found myself applying for jobs even more intensely than I was before. At least 24, if I remember correctly, and a doctoral program. I was able to find my friends again, define my time again, feel like knowing whatever I wanted did not exclude someone again. But I also found myself asking how that was not the type of relationship I wanted anyway. I wanted someone who could roll with me and appreciate what I was capable of doing. 3 months after my husband left, almost a month after he sent the police to what was our apartment to scare me into signing the divorce papers, I finally asked someone to go out with me for drinks. I thought that maybe I should have taken a year, but other nights I wondered, what would it be like to spend the night with someone I didn't even know? And since I didn't want to end up in a dangerous situation or have someone crazy know where I live, I decided against the one-night stand. But when I asked this brother, I had known him since I first came to New York 7 years ago, and I thought, no, we won't fit. He didn't scare me. Frankly, he had beautiful full lips and a certain softness in his eyes that made me feel like my guard could come down a little bit. And one night, we were talking in front of Penn Station while I was headed back to New Jersey so I could pack more boxes and sleep in the huge king-size bed that I could not sell on Craigslist. It's true, you can't sell that big bed. So he reached out to hug me goodbye. The hug felt like a tiny blue spark jumped into me. A friendly hug, not a kiss, not a meaningful glance, not some scene like a corny romantic comedy, but the goodbye hug. Like when your friend pats you on the back and gives you a pound. A goodbye hug, where you're covered in appropriate December coats and your faces don't touch. The hug lingered for a few seconds longer than the friendly hug, so it felt a little awkward. Refused to acknowledge that said awkwardness and politely said, "Good night." He's divorced too. 2 years after his divorce, he was still feeling this thing, but I felt like we were both being gentle and tiptoeing around each other until we started texting every day. The short exchanges were not my initial idea of courting. Honestly, I never texted anyone like that I was with in the past. So we started talking a few days a week and almost every day for at least an hour after that. And sometimes he'd make a way to pop up where I was hanging out. Surprise! Outkast Love Below album, the one where Andre 3000 is talking about relationship and Big Boy's speaker box sounds like another project altogether, was on my mind. I thought about the skit where the woman is looking for her panties the next day, and the brother at the bed next to her is not judging that she spent the night with him. Instead, he's just glad she's there, and she just wants to know, where are my panties? And I kept debating if that was the question that I wanted to be asking myself. Would I be playing myself like an out-of-tune piano? That was the real question sidling its way through my head. If I took a step toward anyone, would it be a bad idea? Would I get attached? Attachment was not a cage or a bind, I kept saying to myself, even though some people like that kind of play. The first night he came to the old apartment, so much was ambling through my head. This is the bed where my ex was sleeping with me. Is that wrong if I invite someone else into it? What if we act weird if something happens? What if we act weird because nothing happens? What if the sex is whack and I can't get him to leave? What if this ruins the friendship? The onslaught of questions had me thinking like I had entered some adolescent zone of relationships when I didn't have expectations or rules and didn't need them. Oddly enough, we laid in the bed next to each other, talked for hours like we did in previous conversations that jibed with so many topics that I had been interested in already. And he definitely did his share of the talking. Some men will just let you talk, and play like the sensitive listener, so you reveal so much of yourself and you become vulnerable. And others will boorishly talk you into that exhausted silence. But this conversation was a polite volley until he kissed me, and the happy blue spark jolted me again. He was in my bed. It was a done deal that felt completely different from my marriage. And I wondered if this was that post-divorce thing where you assume the person is utterly amazing because the new person is not the ex-person, but no, I could see his shortcomings and flaws. He was definitely different from my ex, but I did not need a proxy or a substitute. And one of the good things was the way he held me as we slept. In 5 years of being with my ex, the holding each other felt like a battle that I could not win. And even if he wasn't holding me, he was close to me, and I wanted that too. He ended up holding me and talking to me months later when my father died and the kick-ass pain blazed through my chest again. Something in his embrace felt like a bomb. But now we can laugh, dance, share banana bread with walnuts and chocolate chips, and sometimes lick our wounds from the world that makes us weary. And sometimes lick our wounds from the world that makes us weary. Sometimes our heart needs things to escape the frantic pounding and the broiling furnace anxiety that can mount itself between ribs and breasts. Sometimes relationships can heal us, or they can punch a hole into us with a straw and suck us dry. And sometimes a connection with someone else can help you cool the grief pent up inside you so your organs can avoid being steamed into shutting down. Sometimes it's like opening a book to an unexpected chapter that writes another story that you could never imagine writing.